Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of FileIO. So this is part 2 that if you checked in last time, you should have already seen the FizzBuzz input project. That was opening a file, writing a bunch of data to it, closing the file. So this is the file that we wrote data to. You'll notice the 1 through 100, or you would if I scrolled up. There we go. So 1 through 100 in a text file. I'll close that. I have put that file here in my FizzBuzz 2 directory. It's Visual Studio Projects FizzBuzz 2. I'm going to go into FizzBuzz 2 there again. If you put it here, the system won't find it. So you do need to actually drop it into this separate directory. You'll see it right there. Alright, so I'll walk you through what this new program is supposed to do. Alright, at the top you'll notice IO stream and F stream, just like we had last time. IO stream is your standard in-out. It gives you access to all kinds of stuff. Your F stream is going to give you the access to the file opening and writing functions. I added an additional include here for string. The reason I did that one is I wanted to use the same. I'm creating a text string of the file name fizzbuzz input.txt. I do the same thing for my output file. So we have string input file, string output file. I then use those in several locations, so it saved me from having to retype the same file name several times. And you'll notice that I highlighted the input file text right there, and it shows up there, and it shows up here, it shows up here. Same thing I can do for output file, shows up in lots of places. It even shows up here in my cout, or my cout statements. I'm doing cout output file, which is name of file. I'm going to put a space right there so that there's a space between the name and my didn't open. Alright, so back to the top. What this program does, this is an old interview project that I've seen a number of times called FizzBuzz. The idea is you take a sequence of numbers, 1 through 100 is common, and you print them out to screen, except for every time one of the numbers is divisible by 3, you replace it with fizz. If the number is divisible by 5, you replace it with buzz. If the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, it should read out FizzBuzz. And that is what this is supposed to do. So let's walk you through it. In our main, after we go through and come up with our using namespace the same way we've done and everything else, we're going to do IF stream in FS. So that's the same as the OF stream that we saw in the last one, except it's the in version. We then have an integer that we set here for a number from file. So when we pull something, when we pull a number from our file that we're reading, we're going to store it here in number from file. We set our strings, as I mentioned, for our text name, for our file names. Here we are going to do our attempt to open our output file and our input file. This is, again, the same thing you saw in the other project, except this time I need one for both. And alright, so now that we have everything open, let's do our little bit of logic to actually pull our information in and then output it. So I have a while loop here that is going to run while my variable for my input file is not, that's this exclamation mark or bang as it's called, while I am not at end of file, we're going to continue executing this while loop. So at the point that end of file returns true, this will make it a false, which will cancel out of my while loop. So in FS, I'm pulling in the next number from file. Now, this does a lot of logic for you, and it's looking in my file. I'll go ahead and pull that open for a token. And in this case, this token is this 1. It will then look for a white space character that's a space or a new line or a tab. And it found a new line right after that 1. So it's going to give me is that 1. It will assign it to number from file. You'll remember that from right here, int number from file. All right. We now have we have in FS, we have number from file, and that has a 1 in it right now. So we will now go down to our conditional tree. If number from file mod 3, hopefully you guys have all experienced the mod operator so far, but what I'm doing, mod is going to divide number from file by 3. It will then check to see what the remainder is. If the remainder is 0, that means that number from file was divisible by 3. If the remainder is anything else, that means it was not divisible by 3. So in this case, 1 divided by 3 does not equal 0. So that is not true. This conditional, I'm not sure if you guys have experienced this one yet, but I have combined 2 conditional statements, 2 ifs in the same line here, and I did that with this double ampersand. So what I'm doing is number from file mod 3, number from file mod 5. This does not execute as true, so we go on to the next one. Else if number from file mod 3, so you'll notice that my very first one I'm checking for 3, if divisible by 3 or 5, or actually 3 and 5. Then I check to see if it's just divisible by 3. Then I see if it's just divisible by 5. If none of those are true, then we go down to our else, and we are printing number from file to out.fs, which is, you'll notice right here, output.text. So it will take the file that we opened called output.text, and it's going to print that number out. So we hit the bottom of our while, it comes back to the top. We have not yet reached the end of file. It now takes a 2, and it's going to go through the whole thing again. It will take a 3, and once it hits 3, it will miss this. So this part of the if executes as true. 3 mod 3 equals 0. However, 3 mod 5 does not equal 0. It will then kick us out of that part down into our else if. 3 mod 3 equals 0, so this part is true. It's going to output fizz to our output file instead of 3. That then loops us back through again, and you'll see how this all happens. So let's go ahead and we're going to run this. I'm going to build and run this program. Alright, it attempts to open, press any key, we push a key, it will then close out, and we have an output file. Alright, and if you look, we have 1, 2, fizz. Fizz is 3 is divisible by 3, so it outputs fizz. Notice down here we have 15, which is divisible by 3 and 5, so that prints fizzbuzz, which is what we wanted to see this thing do. So the important things that we covered were we opened we put our includes in that we needed. We we created variables for our IF stream and OF stream. We then opened our output file. We opened our input file. We pulled data from the input file and set it to a variable. We wrote out to our output file, and then when everything was done, we closed the input file, we closed the output file, and returned 0. So that's how that one went together. In the next video, I plan to do some modifications to what we are outputting, and we'll see where that goes.